Former CIA spy Robert Steele explains why humanity needs to open source everything and how this can be achieved. Interview by Frederic Eger. An interview approved by the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency Publications Review Board. Frederic Eger, please introduce yourself as a person and as a professional who have worked for the U.S. government, the Army and the intelligence sector for decades. Why is it important for the public at large to know about you and your foundation? 9. Robert Steele. I was born in New York in 1952 and have spent most of my life overseas as the son of an oil engineer, as a Marine Corps infantry officer, as a clandestine case officer, and as CEO of a one-man company with global reach. My wife works for the U.S. government. I have 3 sons. I love deep water sailing and non-fiction books. A circumflex I read in 98 categories, one of them fiction. I am passionate about the truth. I really believe that a circumflex the truth at any cost lowers all other costs. A circumflex, it has been my good fortune to be a spy, to create a national analysis center, and to spend 20 years circulating among the global elite and national and corporate intelligence. The reason this has been good is simple. I am certain they do not have the mindset, the ethics, or the sources and methods necessary to find and share a circumflex the truth. A circumflex, we are at the very beginning of creating global human integral consciousness and applied collective intelligence. As for Earth Intelligence Network, EIN, the non-profit that I created with over 20 other people, all volunteers as am I, it is only important as a signpost, as an indicator of what is possible if we all learn to appreciate and demand intelligence, decision support, with integrity, coherence. First, there are 8 a circumflex trabessa of intelligence shown in color blocks. All 8 must be consulted and included for any decision to have validity for the community as a whole. Second, open source everything, OSE, is the technical method. A circumflex, this is the only form of information technology that is affordable, interoperable, and scalable from local to global. Third is the human method, the abbreviation is M4S2. This stands for multinational, multiagency, multidisciplinary, multi-domain information sharing and sense-making. Finally there is the mindset, transparency creates truth, truth creates trust, and left unstated, trust creates a prosperous world at peace, a world that works for all. The web address is there as well. Everything we do is free online. Frederic Eger, for the public to understand, what is the difference between a city police department officer, a FBI special agent, a CIA field operative, a clandestine field operative, or an intelligence analyst, and an independent contractor hired by and working for a government? Robert Steele. In theory a policeman is a local authority, sensitive to local concerns, and strictly compliant with the law. In theory the police are focused on direct face-to-face contact with the public, and they are a deterrent as well as focused on the minority that wish to break local laws with impunity. In fact we are seeing the police, at least in the USA, being militarized and also funded to where they are increasingly using technical surveillance against everybody, using SWAT teams against minor offenders, and generally no longer representing the local public but rather the national police state. In theory a Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, special agent is a national law enforcement officer charged with addressing crimes that cross state lines and are of national concern. They are also under strict but now much looser legal restrictions, and can use intrusive surveillance methods when authorized. A Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, clandestine case officer or spy is subject to U.S. laws but allowed to break all other laws. A circumflex, their job is to recruit traitors. They work undercover and have an unlimited amount of money with which to bribe people, but in fact they rarely get away from the cocktail party circuit and are now afraid of their own shadow. A circumflex, imagine a case officer moving around a circumflex secretly in a convoy with a cadre of bodyguards, all of whom are obvious Americans with too much ink on their arms. CIA is also obsessed with just one of the 15 slices of human intelligence, HUMINT, and this severely limits their utility. Above is the key graphic from my monograph on HUMINT, which, for the record, was approved in pre-publication form by both CIA and Department of Defense. A CIA analyst is not undercover and is responsible for making sense of all sources of information, both secret and open. They tend to be young and lacking in experience, in part because CIA still suffers from a culture of believing that access to secrets is all that is needed, and they discourage broad outreach programs in which mid-career experts without clearances, a circumflex, and without U.S. citizenship, a circumflex, can be consulted in their areas of lifelong interest. Finally, an intelligence contractor is a person, generally experienced, hired to do a lower-level job, either collection or analysis, because the government has been too lazy to properly develop and mature its tables of organization. I strongly oppose the use of contractors in the secret intelligence world, as they are performing duties that are inherently governmental, and they have conflicts of interest from day one. As a general statement, I would say that CIA and other secret and law enforcement services have their stars and their success stories, but these are overshadowed by bureaucracies with too many fat people and too little accountability. Integrity is lacking across the board. We have lost our focus on creating evidence-based decision support. Frederic Eger, when you resigned from the CIA, without going over the details, what were the events, disagreements and a set of policies, values and preferred principles of preference you no longer believed in and no longer wanted to be associated with? Any regrets? Anything you would have done differently? Robert Steele, I remember this very clearly. I had become disenchanted with the lack of professionalism within the spy service. On the one hand, CIA managers refused to change from official cover to non-official cover, so any officer working overseas was within a week or two a circumflex blown to the local liaison service. On the other hand, CIA clandestine managers also lacked internal ethics. My breaking point came when I was ordered to whack down the hall in a circumflex case officer, another case officer, meaning a circumflex lie, cheat, steal, do whatever you have to come back with what I want. A circumflex. By good fortune, I not only was able to leave the clandestine service for the analytic service, with a very good job in the most important secret vault in the USA, a circumflex, the one that managed all technical programs external to the CIA for the Director of Central Intelligence, OSE, but I was also escaped at about the same time year to leave the CIA and return to the Marine Corps as a senior civilian responsible for creating the new Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, McIowa. I continue to hold CIS mission in very high regard. It simply lacks solid leadership that is gruelly committed to the twin needs of deep clandestine human and honest all-source analysis. I have no regrets about my time with CIA. I scored in the top 10 of my graduating class, but was not ranked as such because of internal politics. I was credited with recruiting and producing 5 times the regional average across 3 back-to-back overseas tours. I helped pioneer advanced information technology applications for both the clandestine and the analytic services. I was selected for the mid-career course, war college equivalent but not really a circumflex, just 6 weeks, and I met my wife of 25 years. The most important long-term value of having been a clandestine case officer is that I deeply understand the reality of spying and cannot be lied to by intelligence professionals. I have testified to various presidential and congressional inquiries, and the bottom line is always the same. Intelligence professionals use secrecy to avoid accountability, not to protect sources and methods. It is important for me to observe that I consider most intelligence professionals to be good people trapped in a bad system. CIA has become a bureaucracy and its leaders are focused on protecting the bureaucracy and its budget, not on actually doing what they are supposed to be doing, collecting essential information to create evidence-based decision support. I am on record about there being 7 Gs. I am also on record as wanting to eliminate the Director of National Intelligence, NI, and restore the NSI as the topmost authority. The U.S. intelligence community, a circumflex, particularly the National Security Agency, NSA, a circumflex, is out of control and not only worthless in terms of what it fails to produce at great expense, but pathologically against all democratic principles in what it does collect against all citizens worldwide, generally without processing. Put simply, I aspire to restore CIA to its own motto, John 8:32, a circumflex, ye shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. A circumflex, while creating a smart nation with an open source agency, OSE, as a service of common concern that allows the clandestine service to get back into the business of spying. I do not believe in covert action. A circumflex actions that have to be covert are inherently against any possible a circumflex win-win proposition and therefore suspect. I would rather have CIA focus on human collection and all-source collection management in support of diplomacy, commerce, environmental and other forms of legitimate overt government endeavor. My first book, On Intelligence, Spies and Secrecy in an Open World, 2000, presented a very clear reform agenda. More recently I have published Intelligence for the President and Everyone Else, 2009, Fixing the White House and National Intelligence, 2009, and Perhaps We Should Have Shouted, a 20-year retrospective, 2009. The rest of my work, all visible free online at Phi Beta Iota. The Public Intelligence blog, centers on creating public intelligence in the public interest. Do not ever consider me to be hostile to the art and science of intelligence, secret or otherwise. I may well be the first 21st century intelligence professional, and I dare hope that one day the secret world will rise to my standards of ethics and efficacy at the same time that we create a local to global world brain to produce public intelligence in the public interest, ethical evidence-based decision support on all topics at all times. America needs a secret service, but it must be one in which counterintelligence against our own traitors has pride of place, and one in which we do not, as I have said for a very long time, a circumflex send a spy where a schoolboy can go. A circumflex. We need to be able to collect all that we need. We need to be able to process all that we collect. We need to be able to make sense of all information in all languages all the time. And most of all, we need to be able to provide evidence-based decision support not just to the president, but to every possible consumer of intelligence down to the desk officers and the bureaucracies, and the citizens on the street. At an operational level, the U.S. is still not effective at human intelligence, I addressed the need and the solution in my monograph for the U.S. Army War College, properly cleared by both CIA and DOT, but my work has been ignored to date. At a more strategic level, I want to see education, intelligence, as decision support, and research under one Secretary General. Creating a smart nation is the highest possible national level achievement for an intelligence professional. Creating a global system of shared intelligence able to stop the degradation of the earth and harness the collective intelligence of the 5 billion poor, is the highest possible global level achievement for an intelligence professional. I have 20-25 years left. I aspire to do both. In the meantime, here are my 2 published contributions to this end: Creating a Smart Nation, 2008, and The Ultimate Hack: Reinventing Intelligence to Re-Engineer Earth, 2010. Frederic Eger, How Should We Comprehend the Earth Intelligence Network? Ein, Foundation 3 Long-Term Objectives. 1. Expanding Commons. 2. Saving the Commons. 3. Sharing the Commons, or how these social, political and cultural objectives are grassroots innovations not currently existing can truly make the difference. Robert Steele, The Earth is being looted by the 1% for their own short-term gain. This harms both the 99% that are in poverty today, and all future generations. This persistent looting is made possible by the ignorance of the public, both about the crimes against the public interest and also the alternatives beneficial to all, and the corruption of all governments and political parties. In relation to the welfare of individual families and small communities, government has gotten worse since 1492. Indigenous populations around the globe have always understood the delicate relationship between humans, the earth, and other species with whom we shared the earth. The concept of a circumflex seventh generation, thinking a circumflex always considering the impact of any decision today on the lives of those 7 generations into the future. A circumflex was well established across Africa and the Americas before Christopher Columbus brought guns and disease from Europe to the Americas. The commons is both local and global. The evolution of government in the past 2 centuries has been pathological in nature. Local government in touch with ground truth has been minimized, and national government able to lie to the public and get away with it while looting global resources on behalf of the few has come to the fore. 2 things are changing, both positive, in my view. First, the public is increasingly aware of the dishonesty and ineffectiveness of government. Chernobyl, and now Fukushima are the same disaster with one big difference. Now we have the internet at an advanced stage of development. One is only to compare the ineffectiveness of the $60 billion a year U.S. secret intelligence community with the effectiveness of the zero-cost crisis mappers, the humanitarian technology network, both focused on the recent natural disaster in the Philippines, to understand how much has changed. For many years I have been using this graphic to explain the top-down a circumflex because I say so. Organization is losing ground to the restoration of bottom-up a circumflex because we agree. Organization. We expand the commons by reducing the barriers to public access to public goods, including health services. We save the commons by eradicating organized looting enabled by corrupt governments. We share the commons with other species and future generations by being aware of the true costs of every behavior, product, and service. Frederic Eger, you're right on the Manifesto of Earth Intelligence Network. A careful review of past, Mandate for Change, volumes, all of them partisan, has shown that there are 12 policies: agriculture, diplomacy, economy, education, energy, family, health, immigration, justice, security, must be addressed coherently at all levels. Please name, for each of what you call a circumflex threats, and what could be called dysfunctionalities or pathologies in the current global matrix, one concrete solution your organization helps make a difference. Robert Steele, I have done as you asked and created a table, but consider this an insufficient answer to a most important question. The real question is, how do we achieve local to global stewardship of our shared commons, such that all are accommodated in peace and prosperity? I believe that the answer demands both a mindset and a process such as our indigenous ancestors achieved, and we have lost. We must learn to govern ourselves in the context of nature and with respect for all competing cultures. This means that we must create public intelligence across all topics for the use of all citizens all the time. Intelligence is decision support. It must support the public. Threats and solutions, an original table. Poverty. Poverty boils down to education, employment, health, food, water, and shelter. Our current systems create indentured servants to corrupt capitalism. Education and health services must be free within an automated payment transaction, apartment, tax system that eliminates all other taxes. Everything else depends on transparent, honest government and corporate charters that hold corporations accountable for clean air, water, and soil, and for true cost accounting. Infectious disease. There are two kinds of infectious disease. The first is biological and can be addressed with free public health services and total transparency in the administration of agriculture and food processing. The second relates to toxic corporate behaviors, products, and services. We simply have to be serious. Environmental degradation. True cost economics enables a holistic understanding of what any behavior, product, or service costs in terms of water and fuel, as well as child labor and tax avoidance. It also allows for a complete elimination of a circumflex externalized cost to the public in the way of pollution, drawdown on aquifers, and so on. Interstate conflict. War is profitable for bankers and corporations. Take the profit out of war. If a nation goes to war, all banking and corporate executives should have their salaries reduced to those of their government counterparts, and be forbidden all other forms of income enhancement. Civil war. Legitimate grievances must be acknowledged. There are over 5,000 secessionist movements around the world, 27 of them in the USA, all of them representing minorities that have been abused by the artificial political boundaries imposed by Western colonialism and corrupt indigenous governments. Creating a prosperous world at peace demands an eradication of corruption and respect for the dignity of all living creatures. Proliferation. I include the proliferation of small arms in this threat, not just the proliferation of nuclear and biochemical weapons of mass destruction. The members of the UN Security Council are the greatest proliferators. The time has come to eliminate the Security Council and establish regional unions with regional armies and the right to forbid entry to any persons or organizations engaged in any form of proliferation. Genocide. For me, genocide occurs because of scarcity of natural resources compounded by artificial political boundaries and made worse by the elevation of minorities over majorities, an unfortunate tendency of the British Raj over time. We desperately need to address all 10 threats together, with poverty being properly ranked as number 1, and we need to change our political boundaries and our economic calculations to enable every person to live in safety and dignity. Eliminate scarcity and you eliminate genocide. Other atrocities. Trade in women and children stems from poverty. Trade in body parts stems from corrupt health systems. Both can be stopped by honest governance. Terrorism. State-sponsored terrorism, not local terrorism, is the real threat. We must end unilateral militarism, predatory capitalism, and virtual colonialism. There are the real terrors of the 20th and 21st century. We do this by empowering the public with all information in all languages all the time. Transnational crime. The greatest crimes are those of the banks and the governments they have corrupted. We need to become ruthless about public counterintelligence. In the USA, I particularly desire to redirect the FBI against elite cabals. At We the People Reform Coalition, I have placed the best ideas I have been able to collect from various sources. These are the ideas I stand for, and these are the ideas I would recommend to anyone aspiring to be an honest leader serving in the public interest. Frederic Eger, Open Source Everything, OSE, and the creation of an open source agency, OSE, simply look like an extremely cost-effective management solutions for governments who are already in a position of power and potential abuse of authority. Why do you believe OSE and the creation of an OSE are a truly new sustainable idea that aims to revolutionize society as we know it? Robert Steele. I have spent my life studying the ideas of others, and among those that have most impressed me in this specific area of inquiry are Howard Zinn, Vaclav Havel, and Jonathan Skel. Each of them has written a book, in respective order, that I have summarized and reviewed at Amazon, A Power Governments Cannot Suppress, The Power of the Powerless Citizens Against the State in Central Eastern Europe, and The Unconquerable World of Power, Nonviolence, and the Will of the People. One of my passions is related to removing obstacles to sharing information. I think of discovery, discrimination, distillation, and then dissemination. We do not lack for wisdom on this earth. Where we have a problem is in leveraging the wisdom of those focused on integral consciousness and collective intelligence. We have failed to place sufficient emphasis on education, and especially on holistic education that is fully spiritual, respectful of the wonders of the earth, and oriented toward stewardship of our air, land, and waters. Scarcity, a circumflex, and poverty are contrived artifacts of modern capitalism and a circumflex democracy, in which the few abuse the many with impunity. For me, an open source agency, OSE, is the fastest and least expensive means of creating both a smart nation and a world brain. I have spent over 20 years thinking about this in partnership with others. I believe there is exactly one unlimited resource on this earth, and that is the creative energy of the human brain. Where we have failed, apart from being honest with the 99% among our 1 billion rich, is in not empowering and harvesting the collective intelligence and creative energy of the 5 billion poor. This failure has two parts: a failure to educate all humans to the best of our ability, and a failure to empower all humans with continuing access to all information in all languages all the time. Others have written about revolutions in military affairs, revolutions in business affairs. Some have touched on the concept of revolutionizing education now that the internet makes possible what Ein calls for, the free education of the 5 billion poor, a circumflex one cell call at a time. A circumflex, however, we are still trapped in the top-down command and control paradigm that seeks to monetize the provision of communications services. Where we need to be is in the new liberation paradigm in which we monetize the information transactions and we harvest profit from the wealth created by the 5 billion connected poor. Frederic Eger, in Figure 3 of Aina's brochure, you present 7 core ethical value principles as a base for a new Earth civilization. Love not war, as Gandhi stated. Apply golden rule. We cannot win with gun. Be accountable to all citizens, governmental bodies, others. Integrate faith and values, morality, legitimacy, reciprocity, transparency. Devise and implement long-term multinational, multi-agency, multi-domain campaign. Apply open source intelligence with integrity. When do you foresee our planet Earth as humanity reach the level of awareness of a Type I civilization? Can and will even we make it? How? How optimistic are you? Robert Steele, I am very concerned about the possibility of self-destruction prior to our experiencing a planetary breakthrough in consciousness. Chernobyl should have been a global wake-up call. So also the biochemical atrocities that the USA imposed on Follia with its mutant babies. More recently we have had Fukushima and sarin gas in Syria. In all these instances, the standard response by the concerned governments and corporations has been to lie to the public, to cover up the severity of the situation. Sadly, the standard response of the public has been to accept these lies and ignore threat to humanity. Most people do not realize that most nuclear plants are built at sea level to accommodate water cooling needs. This means that most nuclear plants are subject to catastrophic flooding and immediate meltdown in the aftermath of a tsunami. Now, having said that, by way of concern, I have an equal faith in the limitless possibilities of the human spirit, heart, and brain. I think of the brain as the points of fact, the heart as the spaces between the facts, and the spirit as the engine for integrating heart and brain. We have many forms of intelligence on Earth, including intraterrestrial, plant and animal intelligence, and extraterrestrial, at least 5 different forms of advanced alien civilization resident here in an observer status. The graphic that you refer to, here to the side, is how I connect my vision in service to these larger possibilities. This may be the most useful graphic I have ever created. What I am trying to show here is heaven on earth must be rooted in an objective as well as a spiritual acceptance of reality. When embraced with integrity, which is to say, when the true cost of everything is respected, for example, how much water and fuel goes into making a plastic water bottle that is then thrown away to toxify the earth and kill for generations, then we are in a position to come together and make long-term decisions that are moral, legitimacy, and transparent. Between the energy of the sun, the moisture of the oceans, and the richness of Earth's soil, we are all rich beyond measure. Where we have failed is in understanding that heaven on earth is to be found in the whole, not in the parts. We must achieve integrity. For me, the key is to establish a non-violent critical mass of citizens who understand that banks and guns exist only because we allow them to exist. We allow bankers to cheat us. We allow militaries to kill in our name. Although most religions have espoused the golden rule, a circumflex, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, a circumflex, most religions are, like most governments, a fraud. They wallow in dogma and hypocrisy, and do not actually minister to the masses. Frederic Eger. There are many grassroots movements working for societal changes. Amongst prominent ones we find the Zeitgeist movement, who advocates and focuses on the establishment of a resource-based economy distributing citizens' needs without the existence of market, no commerce, and monetary, no money, systems, or the Thrive movement that focuses amongst others on advocating, promoting, and developing free energy access for all world citizens. How would differentiate your organization from these organizations, either from an ideological perspective, type of values of reference, or from an activist/activism perspective, type of actions Ein is to perform? Robert Steele, Ein is neither ideological nor activist. Perhaps I have made a mistake in conceptualizing Ein as an educational non-profit, but my inclination is to serve all others rather than to claim any sort of leadership role. Ein is a mindset, a method, a process, for connecting dots to dots, dots to humans, and humans to humans. My latest book, The Open Source Everything Manifesto, Transparency, Truth, and Trust, North Atlantic Books Evolver Editions, 2012, does put forward a complementary technical process to the moral and intellectual process created by Ein. My previous book, Intelligence for Earth, Clarity, Diversity, Integrity, and Sustainability, Earth Intelligence Network, 2010, was the book for the I process. What is important about the Circumflex Open Everything GMM is that it makes it possible for millions of people now in poverty to harness the energy of the sun to desalinate and purity water. It allows them to build their own homes with built-in rainwater harvesting and built-in sewage compost capabilities, and it allows them to raise animals and grow food using free energy and free water. The list of opens is in its infancy, but holds great promise. OpenPts and OpenSpectrum provide free telecommunications and free access to the internet and therefore to education and information. I applied this concept to a pilot project, calculating that for $500 million it would be possible to resettle 1 million Somali refugees back in their homeland, adjacent to the sea, and create a completely new civilized self-sustaining humanscape where nothing existed before Circumflex. Much of this cost is related to the transport of the refugees from Uganda and other locations. The actual cost for creating and maintaining a vibrant self-sustaining metropolis using open sources and methods is radically low. Perhaps the core point, one made by Alvin Toffler in his book Power Shift, Knowledge, Wealth, and Violence at the Edge of the 21st Century, Bantam, 1991, is that information, unlike any physical property, can be shared without losing its inherent value. Indeed, information gains value as it is shared because it touches others, blends with other information, and takes on a new life each time it is transmitted. In my view, secrecy and scarcity are two of the worst artifacts devised by humanity. Their genesis is understandable for primitive civilizations such as we remain, but once you have grasped the power of the human brain to evolve and the power of shared information, you should never go backwards. A large part of our challenge is that governments, corporations, universities, even labor unions, are all wedded to the legacy concepts of the past. They are top-down command and control organizations and their leaders are understandably reluctant to give up their privileges. We are rapidly reaching a point where the public must demand the abolishment of the retarded forms of organization that hold us back from progress, and demand instead truly transparent organizations that are an extension of the public mind, not seeking to capture or manipulate the public mind. Just now, as I was writing this, Rick Faulkner, founder of the Pirate Party and author of Swarmwise, the Tactical Manual to Changing the World, Create a Space, 2013, has sent out a list of Circumflex dead industries. His list includes banking, cable and broadcast, copyright, credit card, newspaper, postal, and telecommunications. Frederic Eger, in an interview, you said, Circumflex open source intelligence, (OSE), is being treated as a technical discipline and this is flat out wrong. This, open source everything, OSE, is not a technology challenge, this is a cultural and mindset challenge. All we need to change it is to dismiss the two-party tyranny and re-establish an honest government of, by, and for we the people. Circumflex, how do you achieve that? How can OSE and OSE not only be considered only as a Circumflex technical discipline? Robert Steele, I have not done well as connecting the mindset and methods of open source everything. My latest book, The Open Source Everything Manifesto, Transparency, Truth, and Trust, North Atlantic Books Evolver Editions, 2012, was an attempt to do that. But it was not marketed to the information technology or the public interest groups and I fear it will require someone more publicly visible than me to achieve the proper effect. The concept, in educational terms, strives to permeate the whole and reach each student with these core thoughts. See the diagram. 1. There is a craft of intelligence, decision support, that includes specific steps in a constantly evolving whole. Students must not only learn how to think, you do that, but also how to investigate timeless challenges in the midst of modern chaos. 2. Hybrid public governance is replacing stovepipe governance. Students must learn that no one tribe, among the 8 tribes, academic, civil society, commerce, government, law enforcement, media, military, and non-government/non-profit, all have different mindsets, different information trees that they harvest, and different underlying cultural filters. Long-term sustainable, indigenous 7th generation, decision-making demands an ability to embrace, integrate, and sustain the community of the whole. 3. True cost economics is the foundation for quality control in all evaluations and all decisions about anything tangible. Absent an appreciation for how much virtual water, virtual fossil fuel, child labor, tax avoidance, etc. is contained in any given product, or how toxic its contributions to our air, earth, and water, it is not possible to make intelligent decisions in the modern world. I use the 10 high-level threats established by the UN High-Level Panel, and the 12 core policy domains my own non-profit isolated, as a basis for this exploration. 4. Doing the wrong thing righter is not helpful. Russell Ackoff. We must free ourselves from the many industrial-era wrong things that we have become accustomed to accepting without critical review, and we must establish a new mindset, one focused on doing the right things for the right reasons. War versus peace, concentrated wealth versus plentitude, toxins abundant versus individual and community health. Every aspect of our lives today is ill-served by the structures and mindsets of the path. We can and we should create heaven on earth, and we do this by integrating education, intelligence, decision support, and research into our every waking moment. To the above I would add that students should learn to think at 4 levels simultaneously and continuously: strategic, operational, tactical, and technical. An alternative nomenclature closer to public service lists strategy, policy, acquisition, and operations as the 4 domains. Central to this is the view that it is not possible to have a strategy without understanding the threats and opportunities in detail. It is not possible to craft policy without being conscious of multinational and multi-agency equities. It is not possible to acquire or execute a tangible program that will be affordable, interoperable, and scalable without grasping true cost economics. And finally, operations will work best when they are based on ethical evidence-based decision support and not in pursuit of the unbalanced and unfounded ambitions rooted in corruption, who pays to be heard, or ideology, because I said so. Here to the side is my vision of a world brain that fully integrates civil society, free education, and commercial approaches to information and intelligence. I own 3 of the 4 worlds but have failed to find a good home for this idea. The ideal home would be a university in a town with a strong chamber of commerce and a strong local government, where we could implement this vision. British Columbia, southern Denmark, and the south of France, for example. Nice, all have an appeal to me, but the bottom line is that these ideas are not gaining traction. I have been asked why. The simplest answer I can devise, apart from my own inadequacies, is that all of these ideas threaten the status quo. Anti-deeply circumflex open source everything destroys entire industries, wipes out the unfair advantages of the 1%, and restores power to the people while eradicating fraud, waste, and abuse. Frederic Eger, please synthesize and explain what are and why the 8 functionalities, the technical objectives, the 3 technical implementations, micro-giving, open spectrum and open money, and the elements of the mission-oriented budget are the core solution system of what the Earth Intelligence Network Foundation provides with. Robert Steele, we are now in an era where disintermediation is almost complete. This is to say that Weberian bureaucracy and the existence of institutions are gatekeepers and organizers of information, are both dead. They will fight on for another decade or 2, but gradually I anticipate that first local and then provincial units of territory will begin to execute a circumflex virtual secession in which they stop paying taxes, refuse a circumflex federale, aid in federal armed force, and self-organize. The raw truth is that 50% or more of all wealth is both wasted and concentrated. From agriculture to energy to health to the military, no less than 50% of every tax dollar is wasted in corrupt intermediaries. I do not mean corrupt solely in financial terms, but also in intellectual and efficacy terms. We are on the verge of a clean break with the past. We are on the verge of the greatest revolution in human liberty ever achieved, far beyond the revolutions of France, the USA, and the national liberation movements. Here to the side is my illustration of how micro-giving changes everything. The UN and the Red Cross are grossly inefficient organizations, as are the churches and labor unions. The U.S. government has wasted $2.50 trillion in the circumflex war on poverty, and has nothing to show for it except that poverty has doubled. Today with the internet we can eliminate a circumflex friction and all forms of misrepresentation. I will end with a couple of thoughts on a circumflex infinite wealth and a circumflex cognitive surplus. A circumflex, I credit others with these ideas. Barry Carter, Alvin Toffler, Tom Stewart, and Yochai Benkler have all written books in the 1990 A Circumflex and later about how our human species is capable of creating infinite wealth. That is absolutely correct. The industrial era assembly line, and the reduction of humans to being a circumflex cogs in the machine, a circumflex, certainly accelerated some forms of progress, but it was a wrong turn in the larger schema. Most of what the industrial era has produced has been toxic, costly, and very harmful to humanity. At root our Western civilization is based on fossil fuels we cannot afford to waste creating plastics that toxic, and poison, crystalline. Human energy and human inventiveness has been channeled into servitude in favor of the few at the expense of the many. We have lost what Kirkpatrick Sale calls, in a book by this title, a circumflex human scale. A circumflex cognitive surplus, a term popularized by Clay Sharkey, captures the essence of how we create infinite wealth. Open source everything, OSE, is what enables the creation of local-to-global information sharing networks that convert cognitive surplus into infinite wealth. I do not challenge the benefits of the industrial era in its time, but humanity has matured now, and tools once reserved for governments and corporations are freely available to any individual. The imagination of the open tools movement, which allows the creation of fully functional homes with earth and water and built-in water harvesting and composting, is a major advance. I am very excited by the convergence of humanitarian open-source technologies, big and small datasets becoming accessible to the public, and the emerging public realization that it is possible for the public to be as informed as any set of public or private officials. Just as the state has lost its monopoly on violence, now the state has lost its monopoly on intelligence. An interview by Frederic Eger. A copyright Frederic Eger and Robert David Steele, 2014.